Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of In Lay Terms. This is an in-person episode. I'm your host, Payman Ascari. This is my co-host, Nicky. And today our guest is my very good friend, Mr. Richard Langtry. Richard, I'm blessed that we finally got to the point where I get to do this. I've known you for a few years since the Freedom Convoy, and you're a remarkable human being. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the accolades. It's an honor, Payment. And when we first met at one of the Friday Night Ladies Book Club, it's been interesting. I remember the two meetings we had at your house, where you so graciously did in West Vancouver, and wow, what a foundation that is laid for. Um, well, what they nicknamed me, far right capitalist pig, all kinds of names. So I've been called a Nazi. So the left has got this wonderful occupation of being able to call other people names. So if we can return, then the former premier of the province, um, I think he passed away, and now the current one. Well, these guys are just. I thought it would be fun when there was election going on, and we get an outhouse and put the NDP signs on outhouses and put them around because like these guys, like these guys, they're closet commies, and and Trudeau, uh, the guy's the guy's an absolute joke. So we'll move to, I think, one of the most important things that happened in Canada, and two things that happened in Canada, uh, real Canadian, and that was the truckers' convoy. And I got a little bit involved, standing on overpasses and out there in the truckers' convoy. Um, we were out on Highway Number One on an overpass, and it's all young people. And then we're out at um, Chilliwack, I think, one morning assembling, and it's all these young people and Canadian flags. Just wow! These people get it. And then the trucker convoy ends up in Ottawa. The Conservatives handed this thing. Trudeau calls out the Poor Measures Act like there was nothing violent at all about any of what they were doing. And 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 the following that they've got in Canada is just unbelievable. And they have been Trudeau. The guy's a tyrant. And if you pay attention, 45 years ago, these idiots started taking away our guns, and they've been working at it. And if you go back in history, um, the ones who confiscated people's guns were tyrants. Lenin, uh, I think, was one, and the other one was Adolf Hitler. And guess what they got? And now here we are in Canada, Canadians beating beating the hell out of Americans because of their Second Amendment. They don't even Canadians don't understand what the hell the American Second Amendment was. And so, guess what happened in America? Uh, the left gets out a gun and fires the first shot. The conservatives versus the liberal left. The liberal left made a mistake, and God bless if they pulled this gong show here in Canada, but they pulled the gong show on Donald Trump, and they fired the first bullet. And now the right side figures out here we don't have a clue that the war has been on against us conservative-minded capitalists here in Canada, that the war is on against us. The war's been on. They paint the bloody crosswalks. They put baby changing stations in the men's washrooms. Like it's insanity. And so they've been at war with us. But we yeah, okay, you do your yappy yappy stuff, and we'll just go about doing our job, creating wealth. And but then they made a mistake. They took a shot at Donald Trump. And for those of you who don't buy it, God stepped in, and and basically the American election, talking to Americans, this was an anti-woke election, and woke is we live in it here in BC. This is totally woke. Okay, so it is left wing. NDP, you got an NDP government here. You got an NDP government in Manitoba. You know the Liberals are far left to center. There's no difference between Trudeau and Singh or Sikh or whatever it is. The two guys are sleeping together. So Merry Christmas. It's like you know, I'll keep it clean, but something about same stuff in the same barrel. They don't know when to quit, and they're shoving their left wing politics at us, like, and they're at war. And the war started when they took a shot at Donald Trump, and 1 minute later he said his fist goes up. You want war? You're going to get it. And so now America has been probably the greatest country this planet has ever seen. Why? Because they're generous. And they went into World War II. They didn't need to. This is Europe's war. They go into and save Europe's ass. Of course, Canadian and Australia went along, but it was the Yanks that came to the party, and big time. And they were manufacturing B-29 bombers, like 3 a day in Detroit, like and just amazing. And on top of that, they get slammed from the other side at Pearl Harbor, the Japanese. So they go into the war in Europe in 1941, I think it was, just to save the world from Hitler and his Nazism, which happened to be socialist, and the Nazi stands for National Socialist Workers' Party. So, and 10 years earlier, Adolf Hitler was a member of the Communist Party in Germany. Take that.
I did not know that.
Yes.
I know that Mussolini he had a socialist newspaper, but I didn't know about Hitler.
Oh yeah, Hitler and this is from my buddy in Germany. And try and find it on the internet. You won't find it, but he apparently has seen pictures or had pictures of Adolf Hitler, 1923, wearing Communist Party. And so what happened? He ended up in a pissing contest against the commies. So that's why he ended up going against the commies, because they were his enemy in politics. And we won't even go down fascism. They can't even define the word properly of what a fascist is. So they're calling a guy in Spain fascist. Well, he was fighting the communists. So, no. So Mussolini, he was a fascist. And it took the Italians, it took them a long time. Finally, in the end, they hung him and his mistress and some others people up. So Italy goes down the road, and then they realize, pulling the stupid. And then finally, in the end, they realize that Mussolini was the problem. So they follow along behind him like a bunch of sheep, and then in the end, when they're losing the war, then they become traitors. So, yeah. Anyways,
At least it was a happy ending. They did kill Mussolini.
oh yeah, well they I think they hung him and they hung him upside down. I got pictures of of
Yeah.
4 or 5 of them, So, but that's the Italians. So anyway, so the trucker convoy, like, no payment. My advice to you is it won't win you an election, but at least those guys were on the right side. And the trucker convoy, Canadian trucker convoy, went viral around the whole world. It was the Canadian truckers that started it. God bless them. And then they go to Ottawa and then they get shit on by Trudeau, and he apparently even hired something like 15,000 uh, um, Ukrainian military cowboys to come in, and so it was just despicable. And where are the Conservatives? Hiding behind their mother's skirt. Uh, what's her name? Uh, Leslyn Lewis. So she pulls a big thing and she goes for a walk amongst the trucker convoy. Like they're handed the gift of these real Canadians, saying enough is enough, and and not only do the conservative let the liberals beat the hell out of legally and everything. They're sending them to jail, and they're still got lawsuits going on against them. This is absolute uh, tyrannical. This is insanity. And Canada, guess what? It's happening in your country, in my country, and you're letting this bullshit go on. Like, stand up and get a backbone. The Americans found one. They got Donald Trump, and that's the anti-woke election. And boy, they're going through and they're cleaning out that swamp in Washington, and we got a worse swamp in Ottawa, full of running the country, full of French Canadians. And if you think that the politicians are running it, guess what, cowboy? It's the bureaucrats are running this country, and they're Quebec. And then when we get on to another subject of Quebec, well, the problem with tariffs and everything with the United States, we had the softwood lumber fiasco. Why? Because in America, the lumber companies own the forests. In Canada, who owns the forests? The government. So it's all crown land. So this is it's an unfair playing field. So I spent years and years and years in Kenora. We got all of these softwood forests all around us, and we got a paper mill in Kenora. And eventually, what happens? It's all gone, and the big the paper mill in Fort Francis, Ontario, closes. The paper mill in Kenora changed hands about 7 times. They couldn't get anywhere running a paper mill. And International Falls, you go to London Drugs and you can buy white paper from International Falls. And what are they doing? They're making it with Canadian softwood. So like this is and then Quebec. And then and Trump knows that 4-letter word milk, MILK. And Ottawa is just sucking up to the Quebecers. They gave them the Quebec dairy farmers an exclusive franchise to Canada. So the Americans got boxed out of milk and cheese and I think chickens and pork with these government institutions cheating uh, not allowing the Americans to sell into our country. Like they allowed 2 or 3%. So just, you know, so, and through my experience of trading $100 million in my career internationally, I get to see who's cheating, who's dumping, and in the Canadian American relationship, the Americans are free traders basically, but you play fair, and that everything's fair. But the Canadians always cheated, uh, negotiated politics on the Americans. So if you think you're Joe Christian Canadians and trade with the United States, and no, uh, Donald Trump and the Americans, they just want to be free traders. They opened up their country to Red China. The prosperity today in Red China basically came with the ability of Red China to sell into the United States. You go to a Walmart store, like can't blame Walmart because Canadians and everybody wants something cheap. So where do they buy $10 toaster? Made in China at Walmart. How the hell they make a toaster? And Walmart makes their profit and everything for a $10 toaster. God only knows. But in trade with uh, the Americans aren't the bad guys. In the 90s, uh, Honda was playing the dumping game into Canada with their Honda Civics. Okay, but in the end, they end up prosperous. But this is this. You get politicians involved and bureaucrats involved, and right away the businessmen leave, and you get a bunch of bureaucrats, idiots, doing their political bullshit over the borders, and you leave it up to the businessmen, and bang, like in business, you understand everything's pretty well black and white. In politics, it's all uh, it's just who can tell the littlest lie, and we live in uh, we live in a society, not just Canada, but all of Europe, uh, left wing politics, even the Vatican left wing. So like, but there is hope for Argentina.
Really?
Yeah, well, I think they've seen the curve, yeah. So who knows? Their dollar now, their peso or whatever it is hit bottom, but Canada, no. Do as you can, Damon, as if you make it to the House of Commons, like you've got a Canada. I do turnarounds in business. Canada is a turnaround, and I wouldn't touch trying to turn around British Columbia or Canada for another 5 or 10 years. It's the trick is when to catch a business that is failing. At what point you catch the business? You catch it soon. But Canada's got a long way to go before it can be turned around. I figure 5 or 10 years, and God bless you and the rest of those guys that go to Ottawa, turning the mentality of the arrogance of Canadians around how many Canadians uh, think that they're better than our neighbor. Love thy neighbor. Now, Canadians hate our neighbor. My test was about 10 years ago in Kenora, doing my own little personal survey. And I come to the conclusion that 65% of Canadians, after you give them 2 beers, will tell you the truth, and 65% will tell you that they hate Americans. 65%. So hate thy neighbor? What kind of a Christian attitude is that? and then with Trump, the hatred, as we were talking about earlier, like in the in the hockey game between Canada and the United States in Montreal on Saturday night. The Americans are there and they're playing the American national anthem, and these Quebecers, uh, 21,000 of them, they're all booing at, when the American national anthem is playing. Like, where is your class? You don't have an ounce of it, and you got Canadian passports. Like what a joke. I remember a story years ago. The Quebecers, they're down in North Carolina, South Carolina. They got a gated community.
Uh,
So what they did was then they in this community they run up a Quebec flag, and the Yanks came in, and they did. I think they didn't even take down the flag; they sawed down
the bull.
the pole as well. Like the arrogance, the audacity that Quebecois would have to go into the United States and raise their Quebec flag. Like, this is like, you don't have a clue as to who America is. America is the most Christian country on this planet that probably we've ever seen, and they're by far the most generous. They go into World War II, they go into Iraq, they spend their lives of their men, they spend billions of dollars. And I remember a relative of mine saying, well, they're there for the oil. They came out of Iraq, they didn't send them a bloody bill. And Saddam Hussein or whoever they got rid of. And now they got this, now they got Iran to deal with it, their nuclear uh, generating plant. Biden knows it is. So, like, this is insanity. And so, like, good news is now we got a businessman, and basically, sum it up: the good guys won in America, the Christians won in America against evil, and look the hell out, because when when Donald Trump says something, he's a businessman, and you dipshit politicians, you can't understand his language at all, because he's a businessman. I'm a businessman, not in his room, but uh, look the hell out, because you don't, in your bullshit politics, you don't have a clue what the truth is.
Can you tell that we were talking about tariffs? Can you tell that story you gave me about, was it widgets, nuts, bolts? Like do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, long time ago, long time ago, uh, when taking over the family business at 23, and that was my first turnaround, and thank you, Lord. And so we were um, we were doing business with Diamond Tool and Horseshoe, who are real high-end tool manufacturers, quality tools, like with Snap-on and those guys, but a smaller competitor, but making high-quality stuff. And they started out as a horseshoe company, and of course they were distributing Cape horseshoe nails. And so anyway, so we were checking the tariffs on nails coming back and forth into Canada, into the United States. And nails made in Canada going into the United States were tariff rate was 2 cents a pound. And the duty coming on nails coming across the border in Canada, made in the United States, was 25%. So I don't know what the 2%, 2 cents a pound worked out to, but 25%, like, no, this is Canadians doing their, well, Canadians, you're just a bunch of cheaters. You got your America is your absolutely best customer. You don't appreciate the fact that they're your customer, and now you're bad mouthing them uh, because Trump's going to slap you with 25% tariffs, and you deserve it because you're just a bunch of cheaters.
What about so the dairy cartel is sort of everybody knows now because Trump sort of brought it up. You mentioned the wheat cartel. What's
Well, that was years ago. Uh, I forget, a long time ago. The the premier of the province of Saskatchewan was in Minneapolis, and he was getting off the plane and interviewing, and he was complaining. Uh, he was complaining about the wheat business. But of course, in Canada, we got this socialist communist wheat board, Canadian wheat board, that only was applied in I think to prairies. It didn't cover wheat, none grown anyways in Ontario, but we had the Canadian wheat board. So these now we got the government of Canada controlling through the wheat board, controlling the export of wheat around the world. And so I forget his name. Anyways, he's premier of the province, and he brings up the situation with wheat. Like you're, what was going on was the Canadians had had the customers around the world, India, etc. So the Americans came in, and as a goodwill gesture, were uh, uh, giving again, being givers, giving wheat for free to the Canadian customer.
really?
Yeah, really. Yeah, and he was Ross Thatcher, I think it was, and he's complaining to the Americans, "Well, you're giving wheat for free to our Canadian customers." But it was again the Yanks just doing their thing, like so. You got the Canadian Wheat Board, another. I didn't list that as another one of our socialist things in this country. So we'll start back about. We'll go down that tangent about Canada being a social country. So now you Canadians, you think that Canada is only just now socialist, but it goes back to Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and that guy hated Americans, in my opinion. And why did we get the metric system? Because he hated Canadians or Americans, and we got this 10% of North America, 200 miles along the strip. We got to switch over to kilometers per hour from pounds to kilogram. We got to switch. This is insanity, insanity. So you get a piece of 3/8 plywood. So they change it to metric, and but it was still being made in inches. So this metrification uh, by Canada, this is insanity. So he's trying to suck up to the Europeans, like what for? Our customer. This is North America. Canadians drive down to the border and with their passport, and they expect to get just walk into the United States of America. You're guests there. You don't even appreciate it. If I was American, I'd pull the same as the Mexican border. I said this 10 years ago. I'd lock down. I'd lock down the Canadian border. I wouldn't let one Canadian, including me, over the border. You're just a bunch of sleazy. Go down there, brag about your socialized medicine system, which is now just a total joke. But the American system, just so you understand, is the American problem with the American system is the United States of America is a litigious country. In other words, the lawyers run rampant. Ask uh, Lord Conrad Black, spent 5 years in jail, and Martha Stewart in jail in the United States. But Lord Black, God bless him, when he was in jail down there, him and a couple of other guys, they set up a school, and they, they, they did a hell of a lot of good in that prison in the United States. And when they left, they standing ovation for Lord Black. God bless him. So he was given the opportunity. He goes to jail. So he turns around and makes the best out of it. And he's teaching and helped a lot of prisoners and Americans get their lives straight. God bless him.
Richard, I have a question about wheat cartel, dairy cartel. Like, is there anything good about these things? Because I'm a free market guy.
Well, this is against. So basically, this is Ottawa playing kiss ass with the Quebecers in the dairy business and giving them a franchise, an exclusive, not monopoly, but an exclusive right for the sale of milk and cheese. And I think it includes chickens and also pork, and they're in Canada. So this is lock lock the Americans in, or anybody else out of the milk business. So they're like, this is Ottawa playing kissy kissy with the Quebecers, uh, and to the detriment of Canadians. So and Trump smells it. He's a businessman. He smells it. He knows the word milk, and like, yeah, no, but this is just the Canadians' socialist way of cheating. So it's not all the dairy business is owned by the government in Canada, but they control it through issuing permits. You buy a permit for $25,000. You get to sell so much, but you got to pay the government to get the permit. So it's just a socialist gong show, and Trump won't put up with this bullshit.
Has anybody ever asked the question, where does this money go for those licenses for the dairy cartel?
Oh, it goes into Ottawa.
But like, is there a justification for it? Like, is there an army of bureaucrats?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, they're and probably 65% of them are French Canadians because they live in all Quebec and they work for the government. And a typical civil service, they they they, they work half as hard, and they get paid twice as much as anybody in the private sector. The civil service. Welcome to British Columbia. Welcome to Ottawa. Welcome to even the city of Vancouver. It's, the bureaucracy here is insane. And what's Trump doing? He's flushing them and firing them. And he said he would drain the swamp, and he's going to drain that swamp called Washington. But we've got our own swamp with frogs and lily pads in Ottawa, and that swamp. But will you Canadians smart enough to know to drain that swamp, or the one over with David Eby over in Victoria? Good luck.
Did you hear the news story in the U.S. over the weekend? The Google searches for things like RICO and corruption lawyer went up like 400. They're all panicking and watching.
Oh well, they're smarting up, and this is one thing about again. I don't know I stated, but I was fortunate to go to university in the United States, so I spent 3.5 years, and I went there single, and then I went back as married, and I worked hard. After we went back, you were allowed maximum of carrying 21 credit hours, and I was carrying 21 credit hours, and I was auditing 3 more. And I hit the dean's list, brag, brag, brag. I hit the dean's list at least twice. So that's being one of the top 10 in business school at the University of North Dakota. And the education I got there, I owe them like unbelievable. Like, and the time we had down there as Canadians was just, oh my God, we were talking about that earlier. You go to university, and if you get a piece of paper on the wall, great. But the reason you go to university is to have a good time. It's like high school, like with and all the boys and girls are now growing up, and the hormones are raging. Jeez, the fun we had. Oh, jeez.
It's like a very expensive sandals vacation.
Eh, well, it's to me, it's part of growing up. But also the most important thing, and I see a deviation today, is that the kids going to university be given the right to pay, even if it's no interest, or is to pay for their university education, to give it to them for free. It's a free lunch, and they won't respect it. But if those kids have to pay for it, and it took me a long time to pay off my 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 indebtedness on my university. And the last payment was $2,000. And I, one of the most gracious, successful men in my life, uh, made that loan, and he didn't want to take the money back, but I basically forced him on. And God bless the Royal Bank of Canada as well. so they were the ones who, when I needed money to go to North Dakota, um, Mr. Armstrong at the Royal Bank lent me $2,000 or $2,500. And the first time around, he said, "Oh, here, take this home and have it co-signed by your dad." So I did, and I went back, got my $2,500, and off we went with bucket loads of Canadian quarters to pay for, because the Americans took the quarters as a straight exchange rate. So we could save 10 or 15% on our tuition fee by paying quarters. So the Canadian showed up with 10, 20, 30 pounds of quarters to pay.
They smartened up now. Whenever I try to sneak a Canadian quarter in, they're like, "Sir, that's a Canadian." They don't take it.
So, but then a year after, this is Royal Bank, and I banked with them for 51 years after that. A year later, I paid off the loan, went back, paid another $2,500 from Mr. Armstrong. And so he says, "Yeah," and he says, "Sign here," and I sign there, and he says, "Well, do you want me to take it home and get my dad's co-signature?" And he says, "No, you're fine on your own signature." Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Royal Bank of Canada.
I had another question for you. You mentioned that the war started when they fired the shot at Trump. Let's go back in history. You painted a different picture for me when you said that this whole socialism thing started with the railroad. Was it 1918?
Yes, yeah, like Canadians think, "Oh, we're just this wonderful, wonderful country," but this place is, and I missed it when I was your age. And so I get involved in politics with Sterling Lyon. But back then we had some real men as premiers of the provinces, Duff-Roblin, Lougheed, out here in BC. Like, wow, these were real men. And but I didn't see it at all. But Canada started down the socialist path. It was the CPR in the 1800s, late 1800s, that because part of the deal was for British Columbia to become part of Canada, there had to be a railroad. And, and who constructed the railroad? With the CPR, the last spike at Gregalicky, and that completion of the Canadian Pacific Railroad, that that basically made Canada, and that was Van Horn, I think, and so he built, competing with the competition in North America in building railroads was absolutely fierce, and Van Horn built the Canadian railroads, the Canadian Pacific Railroad, the prestige in their cars and everything was just unbelievable. And Canadian Pacific Railroad was right up at the top with 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 the rest of them. And then in 1919, at the end of
She won't sit still. Yep, go ahead.
yeah, at 1919, at the end of World War One, I guess the government had made out, or there were a lot of loans to private, independent, small railroads. So who steps in but Ottawa? And they consolidate this whole thing, and they fire up government-owned socialism, communism, call it what you want. They fire up in competition with the CPR, Canadian Pacific Railroad. They fire up the CNR, government-owned railroad, to compete with the private CPR. First, the first one, but then there was the 1917 strike in Winnipeg, and that was huge. And I could be right or I could be wrong, but there were a lot of Polish and Ukrainian immigrants coming out of the Soviet Eastern Europe in Winnipeg, and I think that strike went on for. So the Canadian strike was kind of, but that was just small change. So it was 1919. God bless these kumquats in Ottawa, socialism, communism, fire up the Canadian CNR. Then the next big one was we had our own Elon Musk in Winnipeg, and it was James Richardson, grain merchant, Richardson Grain, and the guy's just a young guy, but he got into airplanes, and I think he started the foundation of Canadian Pacific Airlines. So he needed to set up the airline from aircraft service, passenger service from Winnipeg to Regina. He needed the mail contract. So now you got to go to Canada Post and get the mail contract. So he fought this for years and years and years. So then in 1937, he's still negotiating, and this is 10. He's 10 years into it. He's already got 4 triplanes, and he's. But it's a struggle because he needs that bottom line with the aerial contracts. So he goes to Ottawa and he meets with a guy called C.D. Howe, and he's famous Canadian. C.D. Howe incident, blah 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 blah. So C.D. Howe, who's minister in the government or whatever, says to Jim Ritchie, he says, "Oh, Jim, could I have a copy of your business plan?" So Richardson gives C.D. Howe a copy of his business plan. And Shirley Render writes it in a book called Double Cross. And within 6 months or so, guess what? Your modern day Air Canada, government airline, Trans-Canada Airlines, TCA, was in business, owned by the government, and TCA in 1937 was in business in Canada. Merry Christmas. So now you got the same government, rather than letting free enterprise in the States, like everybody, they build the railroads, entrepreneurs say, you take the gamble, you try, but no, these Ottawa clowns, so you've had this socialism spread in Canada since Christ was a cowboy, and so then you get Tommy Douglas, previous NDP socialist, Saskatchewan, with his socialized medicine, and one of the doctors there said, "Oh, and they went on strike. The doctors in Saskatchewan went on strike, and they said, so what's going to happen is we're going to become doctors, we're going to become civil servants underneath this plan. And 10 years later, you got socialized medicine all across the country. Now you got the government indirectly, directly, however the hell they do it. All your doctors are civil servants. Nurses are civil servants. The hospitals are owned by the government. The government is capable of running nothing. They're incompetent, and you want stuff to be run properly. You have private enterprise, and so he won't even let private medical come into competition with his medical system. And now the Canadian medical system is now like whatever you think Canada, but your medical system's a joke. The smart Canadians, they got a medical problem, they go to the States. My brother, he's alive today because he got blood on his brain in Sun City West, and he had medical insurance through BCAA down in the States, and they took Coke can full of blood out of his head. It was crushing his brain. And so he comes back home and he's talking to his doctor here, and he says to Dave, he says, if you were in Canada, you'd be dead now.
Because of the wait times?
You're given into a medical system. And so my buddy, George Akanowicz, the same thing. His lungs filled up in Chandler. And bang, they got him into the medical system down there. And boy, they drained a couple of liters of fluid out of his lungs and saved his life. And who's to know in Canada? But then this female friend of mine in Winnipeg, so she ends up with cancer in her jaw, and so they think there's a tooth problem or whatever. So they go. So she goes to the dentist, and then she goes to a surgeon. So he takes biopsies and sends them off to the health science center, the lab there, and these kumquats lose her X-rays or whatever. So a month later, she stumbles into a doctor, and he's looking at her, and there's cancer in her jaw, and he had her on the slab, her face peeled open, and taking a piece of bone out of her back and into her jaw, and he saved her life.
American doctor, you mean?
No, Canadian, but it was. But thank God, But it was the point is that the Health Sciences Center lost her X-rays. So if they had not done that, then she would have been. So when she's going under the knife, her doctor told her, he says, Paulette, you've got 50-50 chance that you're going to live. Incompetent, depending on the Canadian medical system. Lord love it. Jeez. So, yeah. But the problem with the American system is litigious. And the lawyers are in there. But it costs American doctors, the unseen cost, in my impression, is that the unseen cost of medicine in the United States, the cost is so high, is because of the legal fees that are associated with it. So, because of the litigious nature of the United States, Lord Conrad Black, et cetera, yeah, they need the insurance, and it ain't cheap, I'm sure.
This is one thing that really gets me angry. They assume that the reason that healthcare is expensive in the U.S. is because it's private. When you talk to these socialists, they're like, "See, America, so we must have socialist healthcare." And I tell them, it wasn't always expensive in the U.S. Like, if you go back 50 years, 60 years, healthcare was relatively on par with your income. But But socialized healthcare is just a nightmare. I don't even go to the doctor unless I'm dead. I don't go to the hospital. There's no point.
Yeah, well, eh, it's real. I'll deviate. So, and I'll go back to the simple point. Prosperity in the world has come through trade and commerce. When people trade and do business, it brings prosperity. And so, going back, and the one government that did anything right was the Romans built roads all throughout Europe, and the roads in Europe facilitated trade and commerce, so that guys could take their products from one town to another on the road, and it was relatively safer now on the roads. So the government did something right. So trade and commerce brings prosperity to the world. Red China today, trade and commerce with the United States and everybody else. And so there's two sides of that equation, and people don't get this. They think that businessmen are just a bunch of bottom feeders and capitalist pigs and only worshiping money. No, they're not the ones that worship money. It's the poor ones that are worshiping money. But then, so the business, trade and commerce builds prosperity in the world. Um, Crystal Palace, 1850, first in the Industrial Revolution. Um, the building of the Crystal Palace was the gong show that opened up the world to trade and commerce. They had 1 million square feet, and exhibitors from all around the world bringing their products to the Crystal Palace. And this was the German prince that was married to, I think, Queen Elizabeth, the young one. Anyway, and that brought trade and commerce. So then now we go to politics. And where do politicians fit into this? Politicians compete with each other, start wars, and bomb, destroy, murder. Young men get murdered or killed in the wars. So what trade and commerce has built, the politicians, EB, uh, you know, all of them, and the bureaucrats, they create wars, and wars destroy, and men get killed, and it is destruction, destructing what trade and commerce has built. Excuse me for ranting, but sorry, I just see it black and white. That's the way it is. And Adolf Hitler was a politician. Uh, on and on and on and on.
Talking about war, this tariff thing, this 51st state, what do you think Canada should do?
In my opinion, Donald Trump is a businessman. And so he's in this political shithole. And he learned the first time round. He thought he could go in and drain the swamp in Washington. He didn't realize how big the alligators were in the swamp. But this time around, he's draining the swamp because now he's got his team. And he's got a team of horsepower. Like Elon Musk, after Elon Musk saw Trump missed the bullet, put his hand up. Elon Musk says, I buy this guy. He's got guts. I buy. And that's when Elon Musk just joined him. He's got Tulsi Gabbard. He's got people. I watched his press secretary last night handling a whole bunch of female reporters asking impossible questions. And this chick that he's got working for him, she is hot. Like, wow, I was just absolutely amazed at her ability to manage all these left wing, uh, woke uh, reporters asking questions. So, and she put them in their place in a nice way. So God bless her, boy. And that's Trump. He's picking the right people, and he's got a team. You think you're up against Donald Trump? Wrong. You got Elon Musk, and Elon Musk is just the beginning. Like boy, he's got a team behind him, and they are invincible. And he sent JD Vance over, and
Oh, I saw that.
boy,
Yeah.
he went over to Europe, and he had a security conference in Munich, and he told my expression coming from Manitoba and Lake of the Woods is he told them where the bear shit in the buckwheat. So you pay up or pay up or screw off, real simple. And he speaks extremely well. He's a good politician, that one boy. He jabbed them in the eye, and they were sitting there. They're not clapping for him or anything, but who gives a shit, Like he. So Europe is a socialist garbage can. 850 government in Brussels overlooking all of the other governments. This is insanity. And what is our British Columbia, Vancouver's most wonderful gift to Europe?
Carbon tax.
Pardon?
Carbon tax.
No, no. The Greenpeace.
Right.
They gave. We sent. We gave generously. We gave Greenpeace to Germany and the rest of Europe. Now, the Green Party is in effect what the NDP is in Canada. They are the controlling balance of power in Europe, uh, putting up windmill farms, all of this global warming insanity. We must go down that road.
Okay. So if you want to talk about global warming, how do you agree or disagree with this view? Under Harper, our economy, we had oil, we were exporting oil, and it was propping up our dollar. Then Trudeau comes in and he has this fantasy idea where he's going to convert it to a green economy, and it doesn't make sense. So he's got to get loans from the central bank to give subsidies to prop this up. So it's essentially the only person that's winning right now in our economy is the central banks and the commercial banks.
Okay, we got to talk about which Trudeau, uh, Pierre Elliott Trudeau or Justin Trudeau.
I mean, from Harper to Justin Trudeau.
Um, can't comment. Um, um, as you go down this, socialist dog path at Christmas, but it was Pierre Elliott Trudeau. I think 1975. He puts the boots to the province of Alberta and control takes control of tries to take control of the oil and gas business. This is the asset of Canada, um, and and in addition to that, he fired up because his father was made his money. He had a chain of I think 30 service stations in Montreal, and he sold that to Imperial Oil. So that was the beginning of the Trudeau prosperity. So Pierre Elliott Trudeau is just a poor little rich kid. He goes off to China and comes back, and he's again. At one time, National Post years ago published the 10 worst prime ministers in Canada, and Pierre Elliott Trudeau won. He was the worst prime minister, but God help you if you can go online and find out that that National Post uh, thing where Pierre Elliott Trudeau was, but he fired up Petro Canada, government owned. service stations, trying to control Alberta's the whole 9 yards. And when he did it in 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 downtown Calgary. In downtown Calgary, they called where Petro Canada was headquartered. They called it Red Square. So yeah, there's so it's just. I'm sorry,
No, no, no. Let me connect a couple of dots based on what you just told me. So CPR becomes CNR. You get
no
national.
competition.
Sorry.
The CNR comes in competition.
So okay, but what I mean is, so you went the railroads kind of drift towards the
Then
government,
then they went to the airline.
right? And then it was healthcare
And
with
there was
probably
healthcare, and then we got
oil and gas.
then we got oil and gas. Now, if you go to a whole bunch of provinces in Canada, uh, monopolize, except for I think Alberta, they monopolize the liquor business. Here in British Columbia, uh, the wholesale importing is British Columbia Liquor Commission, and also they're controlling gambling. But then you go to a government BC uh, liquor store. This is a liquor store run by the government, and this is where you buy your gin or your vodka or your wine or whatever. You and the taxes, and and then they put a 10% tax on it, but they're buying that bottle of wine from Alberta, California for $2 or $4 or $6, and then they control the wholesale, so it goes out to the liquor store, whether it's their own or a private one, and the private liquor store, he's lucky if he can make 15%. Meanwhile, David Eby, that vulture, the provincial sales tax on booze is 10%. So they got their hand in your pocket all the time. Like so. Then they control the gambling, and across the country, this is. Then they control the auto insurance. I think four or seven provinces in the country got government auto insurance. So this is, and then gambling. Like so, they've taken over from the Al Capones, where they're controlling booze, liquor, and gambling. The only thing they can't control is, is prostitution.
They'll get there if they have made
Oh no,
prostitution
well,
somewhere.
that's another gong show. That's abortion. Like, geez.
Before we get into that, I
Yeah,
just wanted to say I'm stating the obvious, but the government just keeps gobbling up all these different industries like it's a monster that's growing.
yeah. Well, in British Columbia, uh, a friend of mine was in the pipe and valve business, and Timberline City Ironworks here. He had a foundry making fire hydrants, valves, and all that stuff. And basically, he had a monopoly. Stan Mason, he had a monopoly on the fire. Everywhere in British Columbia, it's got Terminal City fire hydrants. They're beautiful. And so then basically, the government, because foundries are dirty, blah blah blah. So they ended up, you know, this, driving business out. And then David Eby's talking about bringing business back. You're going to do business with a commie? Good luck. So like the foundries, like they drove them out. Then they took control of the pulp paper industry. They took control of the mining industry. He's talking about, oh, businesses should come here and invest. You're going to come and invest in a province that's run by a commie? God, you business, you get the hell out of here. You don't come here. So geez, just look at the regulations. Like God, like at a construction site, God, the the flag waving companies, they're prolific. Like they're like, and the construction companies got to do business with it because of the laws. That you don't think that these private businesses are going to jeopardize the lives of their employees? Yeah. But no, you got to have these government bureaucrats laying out laws upon laws upon laws. So the the only reason British Columbia is what I term filthy rich, specifically filthy rich. And the reason they're filthy rich is basically with the Chinese money that's been pouring in here since, as far as I know, 1993. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there's two, three, four, $8 billion worth of Chinese, red Chinese, Hong Kong, whatever, money sitting in Richmond banks right now looking for a home. And the Canadians, Donald Trump will never get Canada because Vancouver's already been sold to the red Chinese. They own the change. It isn't Hong Kong, Vancouver's. So, no, no. It's so this thing. Donald will go back to Donald Trump in the 51st. He's in my vernacular as a businessman. He's just pulling the chain. He's jerking the Canadians' chain, and they're biting it. Why would he want 40 million socialists? You know,
That's what I was thinking too when he announced it. I'm like, does he realize he's adding another California to the U.S.?
yeah. Well, yeah. Well, we got to go down that road, Tim. But this is too much fun. So the expression is when God made America, He tipped it to the West, and all the fruits and nuts rolled out to California. Well, okay, welcome to Vancouver. Like,
What happened to California? It used to be like that's the home of Ronald Reagan. It used to be the most prosperous state, and it was a lot of like businesses and entrepreneurs, and they built all these great dams and watershed projects.
yeah. So yeah, it is. Well, surprise, surprise. The population of California and the population of Canada is about the same. So why would Donald Trump and his America, why would they want another California, which in effect is a have not state? Like we have not provinces. Well, California is a have not state. They're left wing wackos, like if, apparently like San Francisco is just a dump, and they got these tent cities, Seattle, and they've gone down this Canadian left wing socialist bullshit, and I think Elon Musk he told California to go to hell and move to Texas.
Oh yeah, he saw the writing on the wall because he's a businessman, and I understand there's a lot of tech companies in there, but the majority of the CEOs of those tech companies, they're they're just CEOs in name, like Jack Dorsey of Twitter. They bring him in as long as he shuts up. He's a pretty face, t-shirt, jeans.
Yeah.
You get along. But Elon Musk, like he is the company when he comes in. And so when he sees all of these progressive woke idiots, it's like, no, I'm moving to Texas.
Yeah. So he's yeah. So but I'll go back. We had our Elon Musk. We had James A. Richardson, and the Canada shit on him, and because if they had to let him run, had to give him the mail contracts, then Canadian Pacific Airlines would no. But we ended up with Air Canada, which eventually went bankrupt, and then ended up that was a turnaround guy came in and tried to turn it around, and he spent like 8 years and walked away with 10 or 15 million dollars American, and he walked away, and the thing went and Air Canada went bankrupt. So it's just one gong show after another, and basically, like J.K. Rowling, there she comes out with on YouTube. She was the one who wrote Harry Potter. She comes out with look it up on YouTube, and she comes out and buttonholes with the ability of women in business. Oh boy. Anyway, it was a friend of mine, female friend of mine at church, sent it to me, and boy, she just so anyways, la di da di da. So, but back to you, Payman. You're running, competing for to win this federal seat in West Vancouver and Whistler. So the question is so just so people know, Payman. As I said earlier, like um, how long, like you're of Iranian descent. So were you born in Canada or in Iran?
I was born in Iran. I've been here since '89.
Since
'89.
89. So that's 99, 09,
36 years, 35 years.
35 years. So how old were you uh, when you came?
I was born in '83, so I was 6 when I got to Ottawa. I was in grade 1.
So basically from grade 1, 6 years old, you being in Canada.
Yeah.
Ottawa. So your mom and dad moved to Ottawa?
Yeah, we actually went. My dad had a visa for Siemens. Through Siemens, he had a visa for Germany. So we were in Germany for 2 years, and then somehow he managed to get a visa for Canada. And he went to Ottawa because he figured it's the capital, it's the best city, not realizing how cold it was. And then yeah, we decided to move to Vancouver.
Yeah. So basically from grade 1, and then so you you went to school in Ottawa and Vancouver?
Yeah, I was in grade 1 in Ottawa, and then from grade 2 until graduation, I was in West Vancouver.
Okay, West Vancouver. Okay. So your dad's been really quite prosperous here in Canada.
He has been. He was a developer, so he used to build houses. Like you build a home and you sell it, and you could do it in the '90s. It's very difficult now because of all the
Oh,
regulation.
yeah.
So I always tell the story that way. Like the reason I'm running is because the '90s Canada was amazing.
Yes.
You had very little government interference, and you could work and live. You provide for family. Now everyone's leaving Canada. This is maddening. This isn't even communism. It's maddening because you work and you work and you work to navigate all these regulations, and then you just end up paying taxes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they got your they got your hand in they got their hand in your pocket every time I turn around. Go buy a gallon liter, excuse me, a liter of gas. And my understanding is that despite the recent cost increases of gasoline, that the cost at the retail service station was like $1.14, $1.15, and then the the local gas station made 5 or 10 cents a liter if they were lucky, but the next 75 or 65 or 75 or 80% was tax. So the tax on, and this is bigotry. Like what they're doing is they're taxing gasoline like through the nose. I suspect that the price of gasoline in Vancouver is the highest in Canada. Joke. You probably want the cheapest, you go to Alberta. But this is a joke there. And then they're turning around subsidizing the electric cars. And they're building HOV lanes. Like uh, this is uh, this is bigotry. They're bigots. So they're humping their political agenda. They're going to save the planet. Sure. Global warming, blah, 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 blah. So we'll go down that tangent over here. So this um, lady I was chasing for a while, she had her, I think her master's in chemistry out of Poland. Then they moved here, and her husband was very successful. And then she ended up going to UBC, working on her master's in environmental engineering, or in the environment. And the woke UBC were pumping into their kids all this global warming stuff. And so she said to me, she says, the climate on the planet is controlled not by on a farts that the cows do or what comes out of exhaust pipes or out of a diesel bus. Uh, the and apparently we're in a carbon drought in the world, so carbon makes the trees grow. So she said to me, the climate of the planet is controlled by three things. First is the path of the Earth around the sun. So if that changes, the climate will change, but it's consistent. So it may go out a millimeter or whatever out of a million miles or whatever it is. So that's the first thing, is the path around the sun. The second thing she said is tilt of the Earth, and it may change, vary a little bit as it goes around, and that is the second thing that controls the environment on the planet. And she said the third thing is sunspots.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are the three things. So these idiots, they think like David Eby, like if he can save the planet by getting rid of gasoline and diesel trucks and cars, and this is and building windmills. Windmill up on the top of Vancouver, North Vancouver. What did it cost them? $2, $5, $10 million. And since I've been here for 8 years, that thing hasn't turned one revolution. So okay, smarten up, you bunch of kumquats. Uh, uh, who's paying for that? You. You're going to save the planet by building windmills that do nothing? And then you're worried it's going to kill the birds? Like, get a life. Jeez. But that's going to come to an end. Apparently, in Germany, they're starting to smarten up. But anyways, so three things that control the planet. That's it. The rest is all University of British Columbia. All the rest of them is bullshit.
Well, it's got to be one of the most effective propaganda campaigns unleashed on humanity, because it's like there have been other lies, but this has been going on for so long.
Oh yeah,
and it's everywhere. It's in high school textbooks.
They
it's
buy
in
it.
University papers. It's in NASA documentation.
It's like propaganda.
It is. It's very, very, very sophisticated. Like I can't think of a single thing. Maybe anti-Semitism in like the Dark Ages. It's like that.
Oh no, COVID-19 it works just as good.
Huh?
There was, and I said to one of the guys in my bike club the other day is I said to him, well, the vaccines for COVID-19 were not really true vaccines. And he said he didn't believe it, but do the math. Go back and do your research. Humans were the guinea pigs. It wasn't tested. And so they've infected, and Alberta does this 2 year long, big long study finding out that there's COVID-19, and they injected this crap into our children. Um, People took it. I think my buddy Jonathan in Finland, I think he took it, and right now he's 37, 38 years old, and I suspect that he's sicker than a dog. And like, did the shots on COVID-19 do it? Who the hell knows? But the bullshit is so deep. And well, there's a German lawyer. He's Dr. Facci in Germany, and he's this is his field, and he called. He said it's just a big joke, and then there's this German lawyer that's chasing down. This is a COVID-19 is a crime against humanity, and but he's got to fight the system. He hasn't got a hope in hell.
You know the problem, again, because I talk to the voters so much, it's a willingness from the voters to accept what the government did. So I don't really have much faith when the government is investigating itself, and it knows that the people want the government to say that everything was above board. So this Alberta thing, I knew it wasn't going to go anywhere.
Yeah, it's there's a path there I'm not going to go down, and about people having faith in the ability of government to do anything other than start wars and kill people. That's all politicians are good for.
It's not their lives. It's not their money. It's our money.
Yeah. Well, it's not. You send young men off to Iraq and it costs billions and billions of dollars and thousands of lives. Young Americans' lives.
I wanted to say something. You were talking earlier about the oil, the gas station, like all these taxes, like 70% is taxes or whatever. It's basically job creation. Like the government takes that money, and it's not like the politician has a briefcase and fills it up. Maybe they do, some of them, but what's happening is they're just creating all these BS bureaucratic positions, like the dairy cartel we were talking about, and we the people, like, we never push back. We never ask for an audit. We never ask for an explanation. Everything gets more expensive. We get all 20% of the GDP now is public sector.
Excuse me, you're just sheep. You got a ring through the nose, and that's Canadian. They buy this bullshit. But the difference is the Americans don't. And all of this woke shit, Planned Parenthood, goes against the fundamental Christianity of the United States of America. And finally, the Americans, the Americans are famous. They hang all their dirty laundry up, and the whole world criticizes them. But the Americans are the first ones to turn on the washing machine and the dryer and to clean their laundry. And right now, they're cleaning the laundry. And this was, in my terms, in America, this was the Christians won. Christian America won big time because their society is based on Judeo-Christian principles, real simple. And you have one passport in the States, or it used to be, you have one passport, that's it. All the others get burned or whatever, but they watered that one down. So we got a whole bunch of Americans up here with draft dodgers that came up 30, 40 years ago and kept their American passports. No, that's for a guy.
But what is with Canada being like the garbage bin of everything bad? Like, first we got the loyalists, so we were loyal to the king, and then we got the draft dodgers.
Well, no, that was the loyalists. That was my grandmother. They were British Empire loyalists, and so they left America because they were loyal to Britain. So the loyalists came to Canada, and so they no different than than the than the Mennonites leaving Russia. Like this is politics and everything else, so they got the hell out. So they were still loyal to they were still loyal to Britain. So and uh, Boston Tea Party, Yanks kicked the Brits out. Merry Christmas, go home, and that was the tax on tea. That was all what it was all about, and but it was deeper than that. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, I don't know. Canadians buy it. They're so there's Canada is such a pot. You get a Canadian passport, you automatically become a millionaire because of the value, the resources of this country. And so, but as somebody wrote recently, you're just a bunch of hewers of wood and drawers of water. You can't produce nothing. Today's a holiday here in Canada. Yeah, every month you get a day off, and meanwhile the Americans are working, and the Red Chinese are working. And Canada takes another got an excuse for another month holiday. They just you're lazy, and the Canadian dollar at 70 cents is the value of what you contribute to the world. Your 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 shares in your country are not worth an American dollar. They're only
It's
worth 70
crazy.
cents.
Like the economy is in such a bad position, and it's all on Trudeau's shoulders. And yet people are still rallying behind Trudeau and Carney because they're painting Trump as this big bad boogeyman.
Yeah, well, that's what they do. That's politics. You get in it.
How stupid are the people that they've forgotten their amnesia over the last 5 years?
No, it goes back to 1919 when they created the CNR. So they, no, Canada, Canadians inherited this country with huge number of resources. They don't have to work. All they have to do is hew the wood and sell the water, and the Canadians are basically with the resources are just filthy rich. So they're spoiled little rich brats crying to the world. They think they're important in the world. Canada is not important in the world. Period. Only in their small arrogant brains.
It's the socialism here that really gets it to me. Like you have regulations and taxation that destroys private industry, and then people turn around and they brag about that. Like that's the good thing about Canada. Like we all look out for each other. I mean,
Oh.
like everybody that's producing is leaving.
Yeah, but that's the socialist, communist propaganda. That's what the communists and especially Russia preached. And so they preach socialism and Marxism and communism. And anytime you get those systems, you get everybody becomes poor. And so, like I think it was Winston Churchill said, capitalism is the best of a bad bunch.
Yeah.
So it's no, it's yeah. God bless America.
Another thing I've noticed: people born baby boom generations, the ones born in like the 45, 55 range, they they long for socialism. They call it a mixed economy. Like they want to go. They just are fascinated with that system. Some of the younger ones that are born now, they're kind of becoming more free market.
But they're in Canada. They're in institutions, whether it's the elementary schools or the high schools, they're getting, or the universities, they're getting all of this propaganda pumped at them. So they're not teaching the kids reading, writing, and arithmetic anymore. They're teaching. They got drag queens coming and putting on shows at their schools. Like this is teachers union idiots, and then Jordan Peterson, he also, he runs amok with the University of Toronto, but he was a lecturer at Harvard, and so he runs amok with them, and much like the truckers convoy that went viral around the world, the surprise, you Canadians, who's the most famous Canadian in the world, the most infamous Canadian in the world, the biggest jerk is Justin Trudeau. And the truckers convoy, they put it on their trucks. They have Trudeau. So the so unbeknownst to Canadians, who the book, to hold up the book, Jordan Peterson, 12 Rules to Life. This guy, he's as popular in the United States as Tucker Carlson. And Tucker Carlson is probably one of the most popular newscasters in the United States. And my espionage, etc., says that Jordan Peterson is popular in a different vein in the United States as Tucker Carlson. But Jordan Peterson is also popular all around the world. So, and Canadians, ask Canadians, well, do you know anything about Jordan Peterson? No, they don't have a clue about who the most famous Canadian in the world today is, and it's Jordan Peterson. And like people pay $400, $500, $600 to go to listen to him for a lecture for 2, 3, 4 hours in cities around the world, and like it's unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable, of course, and he's a old line liberal. I'm old line conservative. He's old line family back, but Jordan Peterson, Albertan, born and raised in northern Alberta, northeast of Edmonton, a small town, and but he's a true old line liberal, and the bigotry towards him has gotten so bad in Canada. This guy's more Canadian than me, and he just said to hell with it. I think he lived in Toronto. They said to hell with it, and for him to say to hell with it, and wish just Justin, two words for Justin Trudeau, and they aren't Merry Christmas, and he left. Jordan Peterson packed up. He had enough of this Canada, this socialist dump. He left and he moved to the United States.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
Yeah, well, that for him to do that, the bigotry or the bias towards him in Canada, whereas in the United States or any country in the world he goes, like God, they're falling all over. The young men are thanking him for helping. It's just one of his rules: stand up straight and put your shoulders back. Clean your own room, and like he nailed it, and Canadians, and to drive Jordan Peterson out of his country, like that is a paradigm moment, boy. Jeez, would I be out of here if I could afford it and I was younger? You in an instant, and if I could become an American, I'd become an American, and I would tear up and I would burn my Canadian passport instantly.
Did you have the opportunity when you were younger?
In 2000, I had the opportunity. I had a 1-year work permit to go and work in the United States. and then, as I told you, in 2006 or seven, I had a choice um, to to move my business down to Rhode Island or stay in Canada, and I made the choice to stay in Canada. And for good or bad, Merry Christmas, Rich. Anyways, back to you. Um, so after, so basically, you're in Canada from the time grade one. So really, all your growing up life, when because you start really remembering stuff when you're about 4 or 5 or 6. So so thank you to your parents for getting you out of Iran. Like wow, but, and so long ago. So God bless them. And so after high school, you went to what, UBC, and what did you do?
No, I didn't. I did a summer course at UBC. It's interesting. Like I have grown up in Canada all my life, but what West Vancouver is like a suburb of Vancouver. I graduated high school. I went to York University, which is in Toronto.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, but like that's another urban center. And then when I graduated York University, I went
So what did you get out of York?
like education wise.
No, no, like degree.
I got my bachelor's in computer science,
Oh, okay.
which is it's good. You're in a STEM field,
Yeah,
and
but you're way ahead of the curve.
I was, but like uh, I didn't realize how bad schools were because in the STEM fields, it didn't woke didn't infiltrate the STEM fields.
The
So
which field?
science, technology, engineering, math.
Oh, I didn't. I never heard that term before.
Yeah, it's for usually only the people that are in it. But it was university was to learn in STEM, not in fine arts, not in dancing, photography, whatever, or even law. They're very woke. So I was kind of lucky. I was shielded by that.
York is woke, or
No, no, no. What I mean is, when you go to university, universities are known for being liberal incubators.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, yeah.
But no, even then, 20 years ago, they were, but not in science and engineering
Oh
are
yeah,
the
yeah.
last ones they attack.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah,
So that even if you're a communist, you kind of understand we need the bridges to not fall. So
right.
let's not attack
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
transgender.
Science. So science. Which one? Science, engineering,
Well, I was in computer science.
and computer science. Well, that's math and
Yeah,
science.
yeah, it's basically mathematics, and it was very hard back then.
Well,
But
it's all brand new.
it was, and it's just like when you're in computer science, you think in a different way from normal human beings, so you'll never integrate into society.
Wow. And wait. What year did you choose to? What year did you go to? How old were you when you went to York?
I think I was 18. It was 2001.
So you got away from home.
I did, yeah. I had to get away.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I couldn't. It was too much, and I wanted to get away. So I went to York, and I was in residence the first year,
Yeah, yeah, of course.
and then I was there for 4.5 years, and then after that, I went to postgrad. I did my PhD in Southampton, England. So I was there for 4 years.
Oh, PhD in Southampton.
Yeah,
Southampton's on the south coast of England.
yeah. That's it's just like an hour, 15, hour and a half out of London. So
Oh, that's all. Oh,
yeah,
yeah, oh, wow. What a so you got your PhD at Southampton.
yeah.
Wow, that's different. So
It was, but like what I was trying to say is, you're basically you're a product of where you live. So I grew up living in West Van, in Toronto.
in Toronto,
Southampton was a little bit better. It was a small town,
yes.
so you're kind of level headed. And then I went to work in the Middle East, which is a war zone, like figuratively. So it builds character. It keeps you grounded. But growing up in these urban centers,
And then all of a sudden being in Southampton.
yeah, yeah. So it was good though because you get really biased when you're in the cities too long.
Oh yeah. But small town like that's me. Like living in a small town, like you get to know everybody. You get to, you're closer to everything. That like I heard that the other day is people who live in North Vancouver, like they want to stay and build a new house on the same street. They don't want to leave. But so so Tampa. So you end up. So you must have got your master's and a PhD.
Yeah.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah, it was a joint program. I've never really had much respect, especially after doing a PhD. I don't have much respect for people who have PhDs. It's not that hard.
Well,
Starting a company is a lot harder. Going and convincing people to buy your product is a lot harder.
hey, that's business. Welcome to my world. So no, that's difficult. So
After I had my PhD, I started a tech company, just pulling cable, installing security cameras.
you started?
Yeah. So the company that started with, this is it's funny because everything that I learned through the company and going out and installing cameras, data centers. Things just changed though. Like during COVID, I was living in West Vancouver in an apartment, Bellevue, where it's a lot of senior citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember they had the mask mandated even in your lobby.
Yeah.
I come out of the elevator, I go to the front entrance, and I took my mask off before I opened the door. And this lady, 80, 85, chased after me and started yelling at me about how I dared to take my mask off before leaving, instead of, taking one step out. Like, I'm not going to argue with an 85-year-old woman.
The masks there was another political thing. Apparently, just a big joke. And but like when I first moved here 8 years ago, I go to Park Royal, and who's wearing masks? All the Chinese immigrants. And communism takes over, and who's wearing masks? Everybody.
You remember at the beginning of COVID, right at the beginning, there were videos going around mocking the Chinese. They're like, "Oh, look at these Chinese with their masks,
Yeah.
Face visor, haha, what a bunch of idiots." A few weeks later, we're those idiots.
Yeah. And they still are. But I go Safeway, I go wherever, and I see people, wearing these masks, and God, yeah.
Where did I see one? I saw one today at the Tim Hortons on the way down.
Yeah.
In Squamish, but I saw one somewhere else. It was at some sort of rally or a political event. It really, it bothers me, but I don't want to be rude to them. Technically, they have a right to do whatever they want.
Yeah, well, that's they as you and I say, they drink the Kool-Aid. So, Merry Christmas.
As long as they pay for the Kool-Aid, it's their.
Yeah, well, of course, anyway. So back to your running. Out of all of the politicians in Canada, and I don't rate any of them high, is your Max Bernier, who is a Quebecer, I think, and he is the only one I think that's knowledgeable on these cartels, and he's saying to get rid of them. And like, geez, like he's got it. That's one thing he's got, but the rest of them aren't paying attention to him. But they need to, because that's really what Trump's telling them. Don't cheat. You're going to cheat on us, okay? Fair ball. And if you raise your tariffs, we'll match you. These stupid Canadians think that they can get into a pissing contest with this giant south of us. Like this is insanity. like David Eby, like these guys, like my expression is like, God, they fall off the turnip truck. God, they're falling off the turnip truck every day on the way to work. Stupid. Jeez. They think this guy's a politician. No, he ain't. He's a businessman. You can pull your political bullshit to your heart's content, but in the end, no, you, no, he's a businessman. Bullshit's still bull. As my brother used to say, you can slide farther on bullshit than you can on dry pavement. So yeah, these guys are all sliding on bullshit. So that's interesting that he said when you come back in 2020 and you're looking at.
Let me add something there. What these politicians are doing, I think it's treasonous. So
Oh,
Doug Ford, he's basically started a war with Trump just for his election chances, which I think was a mistake. Trudeau's doing the same thing.
oh,
This
of
tit
course.
for tat tariff thing.
But you got to, that's politics. You got to, if you can't, if you don't have a competitor, then you make one. So Donald Trump shows up. So these guys, they play the game, uh, and it's hate Donald Trump. And all the Canadians are on the bandwagon, as you said. At Montreal on Saturday night, they're booing our next door neighbor, and we're so gracious that we've had America as our next door neighbor for the last 200-300 years. Like, God, look at all everybody in Europe's got neighbors. Every 10, 15 years they're fighting with each other. And 1812, like it wasn't even a war between Canada and the United States. And we've been blessed with a most prosperous neighbor on the planet, and we sit up here in the cheap seats and badmouth them and hate them. Like, anyways, that's Merry Christmas. So payment. My recommendation to you, if I may, is to take where the conservatives missed. Here comes Nicky. Come on, Nicky.
You want to come up?
Hello, Nicky. Sure, she does.
So what's your suggestion?
My recommendation is, and you could capture, especially in West Vancouver, you could capture a shitload of votes by standing up for bringing the truck convoy thing alive again. That would be, may not win you, but at least you're you're calling a spade, and the trucker convoy, like you can tell the trucker convoy guys, because what were they doing? They were on the overpass where I was, the Chilliwack where I was. The Canadian flags, they're proud to be Canadians, and God bless their little pointed heads, but that's who they were, and they got shit on, and but their cause was right, and Trudeau, that guy, like I he's Catholic, and so is Biden, and both of them are pro-abortion. And I remember making a comment to my church that they should excommunicate Justin Trudeau because of his anti-Christian, anti-Catholic, um, pro-abortion stance. And I was told by our priest, "Oh, we don't want to martyr him. Hell, hand me the spike, I'll hammer it in." Let's martyr him, shit. Like Mark Carney. I was going to look it up before, but Mark Carney is a Keynesian economists. He's left of center, way left. And so the brand name, Poilievre hasn't got any brand name. He hasn't got a team. He's making $300,000 a year, and if he doesn't become prime minister, he'll still win his seat in Ottawa, wherever the hell he is. So he's gonna tell the people in Ottawa where his seat is that he's gonna fire them. Ain't gonna happen. So but he's de facto. They put all this. They put all their cards on this guy. Nobody's read his resume. He's not saleable. He hasn't got a brand name. Uh, the only good thing about him is his wife, and so that's the only asset the man has. And I wouldn't hire him to operate a popsicle stand. He's has he ever really worked in his life? And he's making $300,000 a year in Ottawa. Blah 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 blah, trying to be important. No, what's his name, Scott? Um, he's got the brand name. Who's the economist there? The bank account, the guy.
Mark Carney?
Mark Carney. Yeah, he's got the name, and he's got the brand name, and he's supposedly infamous or famous, whatever the hell. And he, in my opinion, um, it won't change. He'll be de facto prime minister if and when Trudeau does step aside, and then if there is election. Um, I think that he's he's got the brand name. Trudeau had the brand name. The guy behind the brand name, totally incompetent, a part-time school teacher at a high school, a girls' high school, and why he isn't there, and all of that got buried, and so yeah, but no, I think welcome to Canada, welcome to the socialist dump. Uh, they will again. Um, British Columbia, who will they vote for? Conservative, yes, probably, and that's your opposition. So, but the leader's got nothing. Pierre Poilievre, he's just he's a wet noodle, and no guts, no glory. No, he's yeah, he's just a politician. I don't say that with any respect. So
I think this election and the next election, so 2029, 2030, it's really going to be like the last attempt that Canada has to see if we can course correct. The reason I'm saying this is so much business has left the country. There comes a point, a threshold after which you just can't come back to communism. If we get to that point, um, Canada's doomed.
well, as I said, I do business turnarounds. Canada and British Columbia are business turnaround. Uh, from a perspective of doing a turnaround, um, I wouldn't touch Canada or British Columbia for at least 5 or 10 years. It's that's where it's going. You win your seat, you can be that independent voice that 35% that believe and support in my number the, the the Canadian truckers, and they're a good bunch of people. I got to know a few of them, and like these are real men, and there ain't any in this country. But these guys, they stood up and they're on their hind legs, and they got testicles and they got guts, and they did what needed to be done, and then they go to that dump, uh, that swamp called Ottawa, and expect and and Poliver and with their face, they're handed the opportunity, and they for their political stupid, you know they blew it, and they had the chance to do the right thing, whether they could win with it or not. Who gives a shit? It was the right thing to do to support the truckers, and they turned around and walked.
If I can take my PPC hat off for a moment, Pierre Polyev got every opportunity to win, and he has been a horrible leader. Like, I don't see any leadership in the Conservative Party. If you ask me to explain what they stand for, I don't know. I don't know what their values are.
What's he call it? Common sense. Common sense. But he's, yeah, no, if you owned, half a dozen McDonald's restaurants, would you hire him to manage a restaurant? No. Would you hire him to work at your restaurant? Okay, he's got a degree. Yeah, sure. Maybe you hire him, give him, because the best, the best credential on a Canadian resume now is not a university degree, because they're all woke, except for where my grandson's going. And even Jordan Peterson gave credit to Waterloo, you know, so the best thing on a resume today is having worked at McDonald's. They teach you how to work. They teach you how to keep the bathroom clean. They teach you how to look after and be polite to customers. And that is worth a hell of a lot more than some nickel dime piece of paper on the wall of some woke Canadian university. And Jordan Peterson called them all down, all of them. And the school system, it's just a joke. These friend of mine, they from church, they're Spanish. They've been here 8 years, and he just packed up his 12-year-old daughter, and they moved back to socialist Spain.
It's too socialist here for them.
Yeah, well, it was, like he's got a big time engineering degree. He's headed to being his professional engineer. They came back recently just to get their passports. It must have cost him $10,000, but he moved. Him and his wife, good friends of mine, they left here and moved back to Spain. He didn't even have a job, and within 2 weeks, in Spain, he had a job and he's doing well. And and the daughter is going to a non-Catholic public school, and she's having a hard time fitting in. But they were homeschooling her here, so now she's where she's supposed to be, in a school with growing up with kids. It's like Jesus. And I thought about the decision that they made, and I thought, yes, you got the hell out of here. And he had a big time job. He's probably making $250,000 a year here, big time job. And he walked away from it, and he moved his family, his wife and his daughter. They moved back to Spain, and Spain is a social shithole.
I'm going to tell you something that's, maybe you know this, or maybe it'll be alarming. When they're coming to the West, so they have an option. They can go to the U.S., where you have to work your ass off, but you're free, or they can come to Canada, where you have an easy life with healthcare and education.
Yeah.
But so what that happens is we get all the trashy socialist ones. So I'm going to these immigrants and I'm trying to convince them to embrace free market economics. And they're like, no, I like it. I got my hospital.
Yeah. What's it? Yeah, they come, like I said earlier, you get a Canadian passport, you become a millionaire. real simple, because the assets are here. And then you fall into a socialist system, and they come over here, and then they got two passports, and they got a government job. Like, excuse me, like, they're private versus working a government job. In the private sector, public sector, they make twice as much as in the private sector. They work half as hard. They accomplish nothing, and 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 their paycheck is this guy in the private sector paying his taxes to support these clowns.
I know, I agree, but what I'm trying to say is, in your example, as the public sector goes down because people, sorry, the private sector, they're leaving to the U.S.
Yeah,
and the public sector is going up because that's all government knows is how to grow. So your revenue is going down, your costs are going up. Those two have to face reality at some point.
in the modern day terminology of going woke, it's not sustainable.
Yeah,
It cannot be sustained. So my 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 analogy is as the number of civil servants goes up, the IQ descends in a geometric proportion, and as the number of civil servants goes up, their arrogance increases in geometric proportion, because they become arrogant and they get the power, and bang, bang, bang. Welcome to Canada. You don't have the guns. The civil service, Trudeau, he's got the guns. He's got the military. He's got the RCMP. The good guys don't have the guns. Thank you, Canada, and fear of women with guns. And the other guys with guns are the bad guys. These are the gangs. So who's the good guys don't have the guns, and so you take away the guns, and you get an anarchist, and you get another Hitler and another Stalin, and welcome to Canada. And they think that the Americans are with their Second Amendment. They don't understand it at all. And the Second Amendment was the right for that guy to try and shoot um, Donald Trump. That was his right to own a gun in America. And thank God he missed.
yeah. Well, Richard, I guess how long have we been doing? I think we're almost
Too
pushing
long.
2 hours.
It's gone smooth.
Yeah,
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 it's gone smooth. I think we've covered a lot of ground. And so, but in the end, Payman, I wish you well in running politically. Um, your credentials are good. You're having started your own business are good. You're having long time ago some Iranian blood in you. Like, I've got Irish blood in me still, but I think that's an asset. Um, and you just pick the right path. And with Max Bernier, like, I would capitalize on his understanding of all of this Quebec bullshit and milk and that. I would capitalize on that like stink, and call a spade a spade. You may end up on the Trump side, but what the hell? It's just honesty. It's being, in your particular, in your, what you think is right, state it. If they don't like it, tough luck. But at least it's stated. I can't recommend it hard enough that you get into the trucker convoy bunch and go digging in that one, boy. Just go down that rabbit hole, because I think that is those are proud Canadians, really proud Canadians, and they could smell the bullshit, and they they took their trucks and tried to fill them up with the bullshit in Ottawa, and they ended up in jail.
Poor guys. It's sad that Canada was saved by the working class truckers.
Well, they tried.
Nobody else had to. Well, the reason the mandates aren't still there is because of them. Like just a week after the EMA, they started rolling them back in the province.
Oh yeah, well, followed the War Emissions Act. That's that guy Trudeau, like, in private industry, whatever, that guy be in jail.
Oh yeah, for the laws you broke SNC Lavalin, for example.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's, on them, they're playing a game in the world where bribing is normal. So God bless them, but they're from Quebec. So Quebec is corrupt. So of course, you need something done in Quebec. Well, you bribe somebody. So they're in Arabia somewhere. They're doing business all around the world. Of course, you're bribing people. That's So what else is new? That's part of business. So I don't fault SNC Lavalin at all. So and in Quebec, of course, Quebec is corrupt. So you're gonna get anywhere in is sure you bribe somebody because that's what they do. They take bribes.
Yeah, it's the world we live in, I guess. All right, Richard.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for a good interview. The first one I've done in person.
Yeah, well, I think, here we go.
Don't worry, we're not going anywhere.
Come on, Nicky. Come on, Nicky.
Skittish little Border Collie.
He sneaks around the back corner.
She was probably the star of the episode.
Well, hopefully.